Welcome to the Employee to Boss podcast, a podcast for everyone with an entrepreneurial spirit. Every week, I am joined by successful guests in all different industries and stages of business who will share what their experience was like transitioning from employee to boss. Expect action steps, inspiration, and hot topics. This is a resource for you if you're wanting to start a business, go all in on your side hustle, get to the next level in your thriving business, or just hear what it's like taking the leap to becoming your own boss. Business can be very lonely, but it does not have to be. I'm your host, Haley Hayhurst, the owner of Espresso Podcast Production, a full-service podcast production agency specializing in editing, marketing, and strategy. Let's dive into today's topic. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Employee to Boss podcast. I am literally so excited for this episode to go live because I am speaking with Fernanda Bertrand. So in this episode, we're talking about what if you make it to the top of your game, but you still feel unfulfilled. This is exactly what happened to Fernanda before she became a holistic business coach and host of the Highest Self Project podcast. She'll tell you the whole story of her journey from employee to boss, but she had a business before her current one that she scaled to $1.6 million and burnt out. And then she is restarting again with a business that feels so aligned to her. And it's just so inspiring because I think a lot of entrepreneurs aim for these high money goals and then they hit it and they sometimes still feel unfulfilled. And when that happens, what do you do? So that's why I'm so excited for you to tune into this episode. So a little bit more about Fernanda. She is a guide for entrepreneurial women to connect with their highest purpose and craft a vision to scale their business in alignment with who they truly are and who they are meant to serve in this lifetime. I actually worked with Fernanda to help her launch her podcast, and might I say, it is a great one, so definitely go check that out. The link is in the show notes. But I'm excited for you to tune in. So if you have any questions for Fernanda or myself, make sure you connect with us. My Instagram is Espresso Podcast Production. You can find hers in the show notes as well. And I hope you enjoy. Hey, Fernanda, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Employee to Boss podcast. I am really excited for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been manifesting this conversation for a while now, so I'm excited. Thank you.
Every time I talk to you, I just feel so good. Your energy is just amazing, and I was kind of feeling like very low energy, and I was looking forward to our conversation all day. So
Oh, this is
now we're here.
so happy. Thank you for saying that. That's really sweet of you. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, yes, of course. So we met in CEO Society, and it's a local Seattle networking group. And I want to say we met like 6, 7, 8 months ago. It's been a while now.
It has been. I think I went for the first time a year ago. It was last
Okay.
summer. But then I think we connected later that
Mhm.
at towards the end of the year, and I was like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
think I wanna start a podcast. Let's chat." And then we talked. It was gosh, I think you had a so it's gonna be a year now, but you had a Thanksgiving,
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
like, you had
That's
a
right, my Black Friday sale
yes.
last year.
So then I got that, and I was like, "Okay, this is
Yeah.
perfect. Let's connect." But then I really didn't start my podcast until, like, 6 months after we talked, and you were so sweet at helping me set it all up the day that I was setting up. I was like, "Haley, I don't know what to do. This is so hard." And you're like, "It's okay, it's okay." So we're chatting that day, and I was just so
Mhm.
thankful for you because that would have taken me 5 years to figure it out, and you just figured it out in 2 minutes. So
Oh my gosh. Well, I was so thrilled when you started your podcast, and it is not something that you start overnight for sure. I always say that. So the fact that it took you 6 months isn't abnormal. And I'm excited to talk all about your show. But how about let's start with you telling us more about who you are and what you do?
yes. So I am originally from Brazil. I was born and raised there, and I moved to the US when I was 16 to live with my dad. And the plan was for me to stay here for a couple years and go back. I told my mom, I'm going to come back. Don't worry. And here I am, 20 plus years later, I have not come back to live, but I do come back to visit quite a bit. But yeah, I stayed and I did the whole high school, and I was like, well, I might as well go to college. So I went to school for interior design, and that's met my husband in LA, and then we moved up here to Seattle after we got married. And now we're here 3 kids later and just restarting again after starting a really successful business and just doing all of the scaling of that. It was really fun, a really great experience. And then I just decided that I wanted to find something with more purpose, that I was actually using my God-given talents to help the world and people around me. So it's been a fun journey. I've been coaching now for the past year and just going with it and growing. And now I'm kind of joining forces with my husband, and we're tackling the more like strategic parts of coaching together. Like he looks at the financial and just the more masculine side of seeing the
Mhm.
business, where I'm more like, what's the big vision? Like, let's dream together, you know? And I like to make things pretty. I love marketing, I love designing, but he's very strategic. So I think we make a really good team, and I'm excited to join forces with him.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And, you know, I remember when we first met and you were saying how, the balance between the masculine and the feminine is really, really important to you and your business because, in your last business, maybe that wasn't
Mhm.
all there, the balance wasn't there. So in this business that you're been in for a year now, that's a really big focus for you. So congratulations on staying
Thank
true to
you.
yourself and making that all happen. So tell us more about, your journey from employee to boss,
Yeah.
how you got to where you are now.
So I always joke that I am actually unemployable because I don't know how to get a real job. I've never had like a legit like adult job, with a 401k and, benefits, any of that stuff. I had a retail job right after college, and then I became a mom and was at home and realized that the 9 to 5 was never going to really work out for me with the amount of money that I was going to get. Like, it just didn't make sense for childcare. So I was kind of thrown into this entrepreneurial realm. Like, it wasn't something that I thought I was going to do, but once I became a mom, it was like, oh yeah, there's no way I can do this, 40-hour week type of setup and still be there for my family. So that's when, and I was also, I felt a little bit of a void being home and just being the caretaker, and I wanted more, and that's when I started to just think, "Okay, well, I have this degree, let me do something with that." So I didn't even have a website in the beginning, and I just started on Craigslist, and I put an ad, and and I was doing, like, interior design consultations for, like, 100 bucks, and I would just put these ads up, and I would call my husband every time I got to a place and be like, "Here's the address. I'm here. If you don't hear back from me in an hour, like, call
Come
me,"
save me.
you know? So that's kind of how I got started. It was like, "Okay, let me do this. Let me try," and I bootstrapped that first business, and it was very word of mouth, and I just taught myself how to do everything. I had no, well, going to interior design school, I had the design background, but I really had no idea how to set up a business, an LLC, or any of the marketing stuff. I had no idea. So I taught myself how to do everything. I built my website from scratch, like WordPress. So it's really hard, and I did
Mhm.
it, and that was a great skill to have. So now I can make websites like this, and I've made a ton of them, and I help my clients making websites. So it's like all the skills that I worked on, I still use it, even though at the time I'm like, why am I like spending so much time doing this? It's never for nothing. But that's how I started, and then I went from interior design to starting the staging company with a friend, and it was kinda started as a side hustle, and then it became really big. So we
Mhm.
started with a $500 investment, and it turned into 1.6 million in 3 years. So it was a really rapid growth,
Mhm.
but also the best business degree that I could have ever hoped for because I got paid.
Yeah.
And, I was hands-on in every part of scaling a business, and I can basically transition into anything now, right? Like, having that skill set. And it was brutal and amazing all at the same time. Like all the great stories, right? But I essentially had like a mental breakdown while growing that business because it became just too big and I didn't have the foundation to withstand that amount of success, right? Like you have to become a different person to continue that same level. So I had to like take a step back before I could take another step forward again. And it was good.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure you learned a lot about yourself to be able to also stop that too, because what was, like, the end like? Like, when you decided that that was not gonna be the business for you anymore? Because I think it's hard to walk away from a business that scaled to 1.6 million.
Oh yeah, it was probably the hardest decision that I made because
Mhm.
on paper, it made absolutely no sense. Every single business consultant that I talked to, my lawyers, I spent so much money with consultants and lawyers, and they were like, "This is dumb. Like, you have a cash cow here." Like, at that point, I was not even really working and making a lot of money, but,
Mhm.
like, my commitment to work was very small. I didn't really I wasn't trading my hours for money anymore, and so, like, on paper, it made absolutely no sense, but, like, deep down in my gut, I knew it. I was like, "I'm done. This is not it for me anymore." Like, I'm ready for a new challenge, and it's kind of like just jumping into this new chapter without knowing. I had no idea how we were gonna make this work. In fact, there are months that I'm still like, I don't even know how this month is gonna work, and somehow
Mhm.
it always pans out, and the thing is that my husband and I jumped at the same time. He quit his stable
Mm.
job in January, and in March, I decided that I was not gonna stay in that partnership anymore, and so it was really unknown, and I negotiated my way out for 15 months because I didn't have an operating agreement.
Oh my
Which
gosh.
was, like, the dumbest business decision, but also, like, I learned so much from it, right? Like,
Mhm.
I feel like every mistake that we make in business is actually just a another learning lesson. But yeah, it was really unknown, but, like, I can't explain it. I had this feeling, I had this gut feeling that I was like, this is not it for me. I'm ready to go full in into something that's, like, my passion, that I'm like
Yeah.
that I feel like I am doing the thing that I was meant to do here on earth, and that's how
Mhm.
I feel like on paper, this new venture is kind of a failure this past year. When I look at how much money I've put in and how much money I've made, I'm like paying to work at this point, but it's
Mm.
like, it's still a dream because I get to do the thing that I think I was meant to do, which is to inspire and help other people And I love the entrepreneurial game. I think it's so fun. Like when you look at it from this point of view, like, oh, this is a game. Like it's all in my mind, right? It's all perspective. And so I love it. And it's been a really, like, sometimes I'm like, I cannot believe that this is what I get to do. Like this is my work.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will say you are living that. You are inspiring people. You are living like I don't know, just every post you make, I just feel inspired by what you're doing and how you do it.
That's really sweet. Thank you. And it's hard because I put content out, put podcasts out, and it takes a
Mhm.
lot of time, and it's a
Yeah.
lot of effort to do these things, but I do it from my heart. And sometimes I'm like, I don't even know if there's anyone out there even seeing these things. And then I'll get like
Mhm.
a random message of someone like DMing me, like, oh my God, I was having such a crappy day today and you inspired me. Or somebody will
Aw.
repost something that I put out. And then I'm like, okay, these are all like little nuggets of the universe saying, like, keep going, keep going, keep going.
Yeah.
And it takes time. It takes time to see the fruits of your labor, and
Yeah.
I just keep getting reminded to keep going, keep going.
That's very true. And when you left your last company, the last, company you owned, did you already know what you wanted to do?
By the time that the contract was signed and everything, yes. But, like,
Mhm.
from the moments that I decided I didn't wanna be in that partnership anymore, I actually had no idea how things were gonna pan out.
Mm.
Like, I thought
Yeah.
I didn't know if I was gonna keep the business, if she was gonna keep the business, if we were gonna have to liquidate the business. Like, I had no idea whatsoever. I just knew I wanted to be out. I wanted to be done with that chapter. And no, so I didn't know. And I actually
Yeah.
started a business in between this business doing interior design, and I, like, opened up an LLC and, had everything laid out, and I actually had these clients just land on on my lap. It was so odd how it all worked out, but it was, like, perfect clients, like, and then I did it and I was like, I'm not passionate about this anymore. Like that's not my thing anymore." And then the thing that I started to realize is that we have a cycle as humans, right? And I read about this, but there's a 7-year cycle where you literally become a new person every 7 years. Your cells are regenerating every 7 years. So as soon as you master something, you're kind of ready for something else. We're not meant to do the same thing for the rest of our lives. Like this idea that you go to school and you have to do that same job until you retire is kind of nuts because it doesn't really, like, we need a challenge. We need like what's next. So the way I
Mhm.
look at my business, it's really like a vehicle for all the things that I want to do. So what I'm building right now isn't necessarily just a business, but it's a brand. And what are all the things that I want to do underneath this brand? Like I want to write and I want to speak and I want to do a podcast and I want to do business. Like there's so many things that I want to do. And I think that that's the fun part of the business. It's like, okay, what else do I want to develop? What else do I want to do?
Yeah.
And then you run with that instead of like, I have to be in this box and this is the only box that I have to be until I hit 65. And I also
Yeah.
like don't look at my business as like, oh, I have to retire from this because I don't think that that's necessarily what I want. I wanna keep doing, like, once you find your passion, there's no retiring from it.
I agree with that. And I'm curious because you found this new path to self-discovery and, figured out what you wanted to do in this new cycle of your life. So, can you share some tips on how you help others figure out what they actually want to do?
Well, I do a lot of visualization in my practice. So, just finding stillness and just really connecting with Like, I feel like we already have the answers for everything that
Mhm.
we ever search for, but we never
Mm.
find the stillness to just look within and be like, what's really my deepest desire, right? Because it's really a lot of surface level desires that we're searching for. Like, we think that we want money, but we really don't want money. We want the freedom that money gets us. We want the feelings, the experiences, the love, the connection, the fulfillment. But then we go after the money and we think that that's what we're going after, and then we get to that and we're like, "Oh wait, I'm still really unfulfilled." But it's because you didn't
Mhm.
go for your deepest desires. So that's what I help my clients do is get it, like, what's your actual desire here? Like, let's get underneath, the surface level, and let's get into, like, what's really what you want. What are you really looking for? And then from that, we can create a vision for their lives and what they're wanting to their lives to be. And then we kind of just see, okay, this is where I want to get to. So what are my steps, right? Like, what's my 5-year plan? What's my 2-year plan? What are going to be the benchmarks? And the other thing that I do that seems to be like like a mind-blowing activity, but it's like, let's actually look at what your dream life costs. And
Mhm.
then once they can see that, like, okay, my dream house costs this, my dream car costs this, and then we get to the number, and it's always, like, way more achievable than they think it is, right? And then once we can connect with that, like, "Okay, this is the number that I'm setting, that I'm going for," then what's my plan? Like, how is my business gonna help me get to that in the next however many years they wanna grow? So
Yeah.
that's those are some of the ways that I help people. It's so essentially, let's get down to, like, what's the deepest desire here, and figure it out what the gap is and how you can make those small steps. Because I struggle with that, like, sometimes I'm like, I have all these dreams, and
Oh, me too, girl.
and
Me
it's
too.
like, whoa, how do I get to that? But, like, when I center myself and I'm like, okay, what what's actually my actionable steps that I have to take, then it becomes a lot more reachable than just like this ethereal thing in my mind.
So all of that really makes me think about how you had to do all this work to, like, know yourself. So I'm curious, when you're working with clients, I feel like a lot of people feel stuck in what they're doing. A
Mhm,
lot of people. And like sometimes even I've been in business for 4.5 years and I've evolved my business. I don't know, maybe every year I learn a new
mhm,
skill and offer it to my clients. Like 2 years ago, I started offering more strategy, which is how we work together. We did a
mhm,
VIP day session with the strategy. So for me, that's what works. But then sometimes I do get burnt out of, just the boring things in business that we all have to do. And, when you finally make, I don't know, a certain amount of money, you can outsource those tasks,
mhm,
but for a lot of us in, the first few years, like, we're not outsourcing most
mhm,
of what we're doing. So, I'm interested in hearing, have you worked with anyone or even sharing your own story of how you were able to think of this in a new way, like
mhm.
stopping what being able to break free of maybe your past identity and start anew.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I honestly feel like once we find our purpose, right? Like our deeper purpose of this lifetime, it actually doesn't matter what you're doing. Like, I could be scrubbing
Mm.
toilet for a living and I can still be living in my purpose, right? Like, if I decide that my purpose is to inspire other people, like to give people something from me, it doesn't matter. I can work retail, I can scrub toilets, I can be a coffee barista, but I'm working on my purpose. And that's the only way that we can shift this mindset, because there's going to be a lot of really crappy situations in your business. And actually, the higher level you get to, the more problems you get confronted with. If we think that it gets easier as you grow, but it actually gets a lot harder because, yeah, outsourcing seems like a great thing to do, but then you get into dealing with humans, and that is
Yep.
the hardest part about scaling a business is that you're not dealing with robots, you're dealing with people, you're dealing with humans, right? And when you have a big vision, when you have a big mission for what you're here to do, then you can enroll people in your mission, and then these people can become like part of your story, but also you're helping them at the same time, right? It's like a exchange. So, yeah, outsourcing is great, but it also comes with a big responsibility because it's not about like, oh, I had a bad month this month, so I got to like squeeze a little bit. It's like, oh, no, I got to make payroll. Like I
Mhm.
may not be able to pay my mortgage this month because I have to, I'm responsible for someone else now. So like your level of problems actually it just gets higher and higher, and I honestly think that only when you have a true purpose that you merge with your business that you're able to keep going because
Mm.
it's inevitable. Like, the higher you go, the higher the fall, right? Like, so
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
the stakes get higher and higher and higher, and I think that's the only way to get through is by connecting with, your bigger purpose of this lifetime. Not just, "Oh, I'm just helping my clients make more money," but, like, "No, I'm here to, like, make the world a better place with the thing that I'm doing, with the service that I'm
Right.
providing," right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so true. And I always get worried for people like, when we're in college and people choose their careers or career paths off of money.
Mhm.
They're like, "Oh, I want to become a doctor because of the amount of money," or "Oh, I want to do this because of the amount of money." And that is a path to burnout, I would think, for sure.
100%.
Because money will be great, but if you're only have, I don't know, 2 weeks of PTO and you're making all this money, like,
Yeah,
what's the point?
and really the goal isn't to just have financial freedom, but the goal is to have financial and time freedom because this is what
Yeah,
happened to me. I was making so much money, but I didn't even have time to spend my money. And
yeah,
I didn't even have control over my money because as fast as it was coming, it was getting out of my control, because you're just like in this hectic energy. And but that's what it really showed me. Like, I always thought, okay, that's what I really want. Once I have this money, once I can buy all the bags that I want, then I'll be happy,
mhm,
then I'll finally be happy, right? Like, it's the famous, like, once this, then I'll be happy. But it was, like, just such a defining moment in my life to, like, get to that and be like, "I've never been more miserable in my life, actually." And and then connecting with, like, "Oh, it's so much more than that. Like, I want so much more than just money. I want money and I want impact and I want to be living in my purpose and I want to feel like my life is here and it's making a difference, right? It's
yeah,
more. And that's what I didn't understand at first. I thought it was just
mm,
the pursuit of money, of more things and status and all of these things, but they
yeah,
just left me empty at the end of it all. So now I'm in a search of like, okay, let me do this again. Like, if I have this opportunity to start over, which I think it's like wonderful and I'm so grateful and like honestly so grateful that I was able to sell my business and like be able to start again because it's a hustle to start again, to start over,
yeah,
right? And I'm having to learn things that I haven't learned before, and there's a learning curve to things. And I worked for free a lot this past year. Like, I've helped a lot of people, but a lot of it was no like monetary return. But it's the energetic investment that I'm putting towards this because I know the potential it has.
yeah. And before this whole experience with leaving this last job and starting your new company, Did you have, like, this self-awareness before, or is this something that you've learned over the past year? Like, have you always been spiritually minded and, you know, balancing the masculine and feminine, like, when you were younger,
Mhm.
or is
No.
this something over the
No,
past
not at
year that
all.
you've
I was
That's
just
so
go
interesting.
I was just going with the flow. I was just going with, like, even when I started my last business, it was like, "Oh, let me just see where it goes." Like, I had no, like, real like, obviously, I started to, like, have bigger plans once it became
Yeah.
bigger. But it was kind of one of those like, oh, let me just see where the universe wants to take me. And I would just go with the flow. And I thought that I wanted certain things. But the older you get, then you start to really shift your thinking and like see things from a different perspective. And it really started for me about 3 years ago. It was like literally when I hit 35 that I just started to, like, have all these thoughts of, like, "Wait, all the things that I thought were real didn't seem like it made sense anymore." And it was a weird transition, and I feel like in a way I'm still kind of going through it. There's been a lot of big decisions that I've made in my life that I never thought I would. But
Mm.
I think there's something about getting older maybe that, like, helped me get this perspective, but no, not at all. I was not, like, thinking about any of this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
10 years ago, I was not Googling the same stuff that I'm Googling today, so, like, that's why it's hard for me sometimes because my target audience really is my version 10 years ago. But
Mhm.
then, when like, the things that I'm Googling now I didn't even have the vocabulary for that 10 years ago, right? Like, I
Yeah.
was searching, like, how do I make more money? How do I
Yeah.
like, it wasn't like, who's my highest self? And, those are things that I was not looking for back then.
That's so funny. No, I had to ask that because I think that, you know, you've done all this work and you are doing it so amazing, and sometimes it's hard to think of, like, you before you knew all of this,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And so I think it's important for the audience to know if they aren't thinking like this at all, that is okay, and that is why Fernanda is teaching on what she teaches on.
Yes.
And you just started this podcast, it's an amazing free resource for people to come and learn directly from you and learn your teachings. Can you tell us more about your podcast?
Yes. So it is called the Highest Self Project, and it is where I share the good, the bad, and everything in between of what helps me connect with my highest self. It's not
Mhm.
I don't talk about business very much there. It's not like a business coaching type of thing, but it's more of like the things that I'm actually going through in my life and how I can connect with my beliefs and become more self-aware through the experiences that I'm having. I think that there's something about sharing authentically, sharing our BS, right? Like we get so conditioned to think that everyone's perfect on social media
Mhm.
because we're
Oh, yeah.
sharing our highlight reels. And then you start to begin to think like, "Oh my gosh, like everyone's lives is just perfect. Everyone's
Mhm.
living their best life. Like no one's dealing with these issues." And I just wanted to open up a space where I could be honest and I could be vulnerable and I could be like, oh, this is what I'm dealing with. It's not always pretty. Even though I'm pursuing this, it does not mean that it's perfect. It's a perfect pursuit, right? And that's what I think I was craving to hear more, like honest things and not so polished and not so like this is my offer at the end of this, but more of
Yeah.
like sharing from the heart. And it's a very slow progress to grow a podcast. We were talking about this when we weren't recording, but yeah, it's slow. It's not there's no real return right away. You don't see who is even listening. It's not even like you don't even get a like. You don't even get
Mhm.
anything, right?
Yeah.
And I actually didn't even look at metrics until like 2 weeks ago, and I just posted my 13th episode today, And
Congrats.
I thank you. And it was kind of nice for me to not see it because I just became used to just posting, just for sharing my voice, not like, "Oh, I wonder how many views I'm gonna get," or, so that's what I wanna keep doing it as long as it's fun for me and it's not this, like, "Oh, I wonder," But
Yeah,
it's
I
been
love
a
that.
fun outlet, but also a lot of work, but it's nice to work on stuff that's your passion. Passion projects are so fun for me.
Yeah, and I love that, and I'm just so happy that you started, and again, congrats. I'm happy that I was able to help you
Oh,
with
you
parts
were
of it, but
so amazing, like, so, so helpful, like, to anyone out there wanting to start a podcast, like, there is something so valuable about hiring someone that has already done it, has already made all the mistakes, and can give you, like even, like, just talking to you for 2 hours, that was, like, so amazing for me, like, I don't know. It was just amazing. So I
well,
really
thank you so much.
appreciate you, and for anyone out there wanting to do one, hire Haley. She's the best.
Well, thank you. Thank you. That's so sweet of you to say. I remember during our VIP session, we were talking about the different phases of like the different seasons
Yes,
and how that relates
yes.
to the seasons of life. And in the winter, it's not your season to launch, right?
Mhm,
That's what we were talking about.
mhm.
But then in the summer and spring when everything is flourishing, that feels better to you.
Yeah,
And I just thought that was so interesting just to talk about because that is true. We don't always have to push and hustle, and
yeah,
there are seasons, like you're saying, like, podcasts do take time to grow. Not everyone's going it's not gonna be a hit from day 1. It might impact people's
yeah,
lives from day 1, 100%. You can have even if you have impact on one person's life,
yeah,
that's powerful. But it might not hit the top 10 charts on day 1, you know? And so, it's just really yes, number 1, having a passion for it, and number 2, like you're saying, understanding what your values and mission is on this earth, and if that aligns with what you're doing, amazing, keep doing it.
yeah. I love that, and I think that I'm reminded of that now that we're going into fall, for the people
Mhm.
that are listening in real time. We're about to enter fall season here, and it's fall is all about like reassessing the things that went right, the things that went wrong, and letting fall away the things that like don't are not driving you forward anymore. So I'm
Mhm.
embracing the fall and just, like, reassessing things, like, what are the things that don't are not helping me move forward
Yeah,
anymore. So there's something to that, to looking at the seasons to help us, like, what's next? And I do feel like that, like, the season of my business that I'm in right now, it's the season of planting seeds. And when you plant deep rooted seeds, it takes time for you to see, it flourish. It takes time for you to harvest. But when you realize that, like, oh, this is what I'm doing right now, I'm planting deep rooted seeds. And yeah, like you said, even if it's one person, like, if I can help one person, that person can help another person, and then that person helps another person. It's a it's a never-ending loop of positivity and possibilities, right? So,
yeah,
it's all about reframing, so I agree with you.
I love that, I love that. Well, as we start to wrap up, is there anything else you wanna talk about that we haven't touched on yet?
No, I think this is great. If anybody wants to check out my podcast, please do and let me know what you think. It's really weird to talk every week and not know who's listening to you. So I'm always like, just give me feedback. Let me know what you want to hear about. So, yeah, the highest self project. I am on Instagram, Fernanda.Bertrand, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I think we talked about everything.
Amazing. Well, I know there's so much else that we could get into. You have a lot of tips on ChatGPT that
Yes.
people are going to have to message you for because that's really powerful. But I really wanted to keep this topic around just your higher self and
I
how you
love
got
that.
here. So I really appreciate you sitting down with me. And Fernanda, this is how I start to end every episode. I would love it if you could share 3 action steps for the audience to take this week based on our conversation to put them into action and move forward with their business, life, whatever it is. So, what would you like to challenge the audience with this week?
Okay. So maybe we can use the example of getting into the fall season right now,
Mhm,
right? So
mhm.
maybe step number one, start to reassess. How did your year go? What are the things that went right? And what are the things that didn't go as the way that you wanted? And then maybe the next one we can go with what are the things that are no longer serving me? Like what are the things that I want to fall away from in this new chapter in this new season? And then planting the seeds, like what's next? What are the things that I want to do next for my business, for myself, for my self-development? I think the more we develop ourselves, we actually develop our business. It goes hand in hand. They go together. So what's the next development for your business? Like who is the person that you need to become to get to the next level of growth? So, I hope that
I
helps.
love those. I love those. I really love those, and I think it's very timely for what everyone is going through right now. So, again, just I want to thank you for taking the time to share everything with us, and all of your links will be in the show notes for everyone to reach out to you and to go listen to your podcast and leave a beautiful 5-star review for
I
you.
love it. Thank you so much, Haley. You're such a bright light. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you for listening to the Employee to Boss podcast. If you made it to the end of this episode, I hope that you implement the actionable steps from this week's experts so you can get started with your business today. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the Employee to Boss podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. It helps more than you could ever imagine. Remember, a little progress each day leads to big results. We come out with a new episode every Tuesday. To access our show notes, transcripts, and courses, please check out espressopodcastproduction.com.